So I was going through the assessments from today, and I don't know if, since it was rushed, if you had the opportunity to discuss, clarify why you missed certain problems. So I wanted to go through some items just to make sure you have the concepts concrete before we get to our test. So on 1 through 4 was really emphasizing the need to look at the congruent statement. So when we've got this triangle FGH is congruent to triangle LMN, I really wanted you to pay attention to the details. It's going to help when you do CPCTC and congruent statements in your proofs. So again, the emphasis was, hey, let's make sure that I know if F is the first position, so is L. And then I go to the second and the third. And so I usually match them up with numbers to make sure. And so it's a mirrored image, and it intentionally looks congruent as far as, or similar or close to isosceles, so that you potentially would go too fast. So I feel like an SAT test writer right now, but I want you to pay attention to those details. So knowing that G and M are congruent, and we didn't really need to know that. It's always something where we make that translation where it looks in similar positions. So just make sure you're paying attention to the congruent statement. I'm going to go on to the other portion of the quiz now. Sorry, this is taking a long time. I don't know why the technology is not working. But I wanted to walk through the quiz. And just go through some common assumptions that I run into, and maybe you find those and learn from it, and then resist when you guys do that on your test, or resist to do it, to prevent yourself from doing it. So what we have to do is only make conclusions based on the drawings and not make any assumptions. So when I look at number 5, I've got 2 triangles, and their shared side is FH. So by side, side, side. I don't have any vertical angles and no real way, sorry, I'm adjusting my line thickness. No real way to get any angle information. So remember the reflexive, right? That is your friend property. The next one, I see vertical angles, and so I know those are congruent. There was a tendency to make the assumption that because I've got 2 sets of sides congruent, I've got a 3rd set of sides congruent. There's actually no theorem, postulate, definition, or anything that tells us that. So we have to resist. Just because FG is congruent to GH, you might say, oh, it looks like the segments bisect each other, right? Or G is a midpoint, then it would be a midpoint of EJ. That is an assumption. There's nothing that says that that's a midpoint. So while I see a side, and an angle, we should be like, whoops, no way, we don't use that one. So this is not possible. Okay, so be careful. Remember, when you're doing any of these postulates, if you've got, if you look up here, right, when that S is in between the angles in the name, you're going to look for a side that's in between the angles. When that angle is in between the sides, right, it has to be included. So that would be this angle and this angle to be able to use side angle side. Number 7, we see our parallel lines. We love parallel lines because we can say things are congruent. We just have to be cautious again when we use those. Find your transversal. I've got 3 options, but MK is my transversal. I want to be cautious. I'm going to highlight my parallel lines and make sure that the angles that you say are congruent are the ones that are formed by the transversal and the parallel lines. So really the only conclusion I can draw about angles are that these angles, and I'll call them angle 1 and angle 2, are congruent. If I were to say that these angles over here were congruent, I would be making an assumption because they're not formed by parallel lines, even though they're formed by the transversal. They don't have parallel lines, so I don't know if they're congruent. But, so I've got an angle, and side, oh, and another set of angles. So I've got angle, angle, side, okay? Some people might have said angle, side, angle, and that would have been incorrect, okay? Even if they said that, you'd have to give me some justification of why you made this conclusion. On 8, I see a right angle, so I'm like, maybe this is hypotenuse leg. So let's check. And I've got a hypotenuse that are congruent, but I need a set of legs. The assumption that could have been made is that C is a midpoint, or that those lines bisect each other, but there's no information about that. The last thing to look at is my vertical angles. So I love those vertical angles, so make sure you're looking at those. And again, angle, angle, side presents itself. We've got our parallel lines and reflexive. So I quick do reflexive. I've got my parallel lines right here and here. And so again, resisting the temptation. I'm going to highlight my lines to flip how those go straight. Go technology. The only angles that I can say are congruent are here and here. So do I have enough information? I've got a set of sides, right? I've got a set of angles, but there are no other angles that I can prove congruent, so not possible. The other assumption that some people make is the assumption that parallel symbol, the triangle, means they're congruent also. Resist that temptation. These triangles are all drawn so they look congruent, so that you would resist that temptation and only base it on the facts. Okay? And finally, number 10, we've got vertical angles. Some people I saw said angle, angle, side, and yet they didn't indicate anything at R or T. I will likely not give any credit for that because it's that side in between the angles. So angle, angle, side would be incorrect unless you actually indicated those third angles were congruent. So you would have to do angle, side, angle. Okay. Likely, if you've made the markings, I will trust your logic related to the markings, but I won't do incorrect conclusions if there aren't any markings there to confirm it or support it. So that's what I have for the quiz. I think number 11 was fine once you drew the figure, right? Once you drew it, then you were able to figure it out. But I guess I'll just go. I'll go with it. I've got it right here, right? The first thing you should do when you're doing problem solving, draw that picture. A, B, C, D, E, and F. And it asked for angle B, A, C. So it's asking for this angle. So we can find this measurement of 120 by going 360 divided by 6 gives me 60. So that's the exterior angle. So the interior angle was 120. And that's based on the fact that they're supplementary, so this is 60, and that is 120, okay? And so triangle sum theorem, or the fact that these are congruent because it's regular, I know these angles are congruent to one another, so that would be 60 divided by 2, or 30 degrees, okay? So my answer is 30. I left the last question for extra credit because it's a little extended. I give you the weekend, so that's why I attached the quiz to the email so that you could do problem number 12, and maybe you do problem number 12 on the back or on another piece of paper because there's not that much room. I apologize for that. And if you turn it on Monday, you can get some extra credit. So I hope you're doing well, having a great weekend, resting up, and we are going to rock this final. So see you guys soon.